Welcome back everyone to more Pure Farming 2018 coverage here at Knee Pit Gaming. Today's video is all about greenhouses. We'll be talking about both the basic greenhouses, which is what you see immediately behind me, as well as the industrial greenhouses. Greenhouses are really good, particularly early game, to get your cash flow started because they provide quite a bit of income with very little outlay of cash. So they're very cheap to purchase and then also to maintain. So let's go ahead and start off by taking a look at our map and seeing where we can locate some of these greenhouses. So if we come into our map itself, press in for the search, and then as we look down through all of the options, we'll see greenhouses toward the bottom. And you can see we have on the Montana map a total of 4 greenhouses plus a couple of industrial greenhouses. And as we look around, there we go, you can see that where we are now, we are located at warehouse number 1. And as I zoom out, you can see here is our starter area where we started the game. And this is a great location to get started out. And the reason it is a great location is because its proximity to both the beginning area of the free farming mode as well as to water. So that's going to give us great access to what we need in order to get started. So if we come back out of there, all we need to do in order to get started with our greenhouse is simply walk up to the circle, and you can see it gives us the option to purchase this for $15,000. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And now we need to select the crops. And you can see that based off of which of the 3 options we choose, we have varying capacities. Now, the amount of money and which one of these you should choose for the most money will change as the game goes on because there is a stock market that determines the prices throughout the game for each of these. So for our purposes, we're simply going to choose tomatoes and get started there. Okay, now we're going to back up just for a second. You can see that the construction completes very quickly. Now we have our tomato sign just outside. But before we go any further, there is an upgrade option. You can see for $10,000 more dollars, let's press B, we can double the capacity. So that's a very good deal. We paid $15,000 just to purchase the greenhouse, and now for less than that, we can double the capacity. So let's go ahead and do that, and I would recommend doing that as soon as you can within the game itself, simply for the efficiency and the ability to earn even more money. Now, the other option you might have seen when we walk back into the circle was the ability to change crops. So if anytime you figure that you should be raising a different crop inside of here for whatever reason, then you definitely have the ability to do that. One thing to keep in mind is what crop you choose may be determined by the equipment you have. And the reason why I say that is because not all of these will give you the same yield as far as the gross volume that you'll get. Peppers will be a little bit less, as an example. So keep that in mind. If you have limited equipment with limiting carrying capacity, then you might want to choose something with a smaller yield simply because it will mean fewer trips to either the storage or to sell those. So now we have our greenhouse. It is fully upgraded. It looks great. So what do we need to do with it? Well, there are 2 things you're going to need to do to get started. The first is provide fertilizer, and where you will do that is right over here to the side. You will simply drive either your truck or a trailer nearby with fertilizer inside and unload there. The other location you'll need to be aware of is the water tank, which is, in this particular case, here in the back corner. Okay, so we need to provide those 2 things. So in order to do that, we'll need some vehicles and some trailers to do so. So here is a great starter trailer to do just that. Now, if you're in free farming mode, this is one of the basic tractor and trailer combinations that they give you to get started. So you're in perfect shape. However, this blue trailer gives you very little capacity, and that will be important later on when it comes time to harvest, because whenever it comes time to harvest, in our case, the tomatoes will be stacked up right here on the pallet once we reach 100% growth. But before we can get to that, we need to provide all of the needed ingredients. And I have found that, again, particularly early on, whenever you're very limited on cash, as you can see in the top right hand corner, we are not limited on cash right now. But if you're limited on cash early on in the game, this is a great way to get started, because while it does not have a huge quantity available, it does have the ability to be very cheap and very accessible. Okay, so in order to get our fertilizer, we'll want the bag fertilizer. And unfortunately now in the game, as of the current update, it does not any longer show the buttons you need to press at the bottom of the screen. So I'm going to press R once I'm within range, and you can see I can fit a grand total of 18 bags of fertilizer, and that will cost me $360 to do so. Now we have a full load of fertilizer, and note that you can refill the fertilizer bags at any of these locations. These fertilizer pallets are located with each and every shed that I've come across in the game, so you should have no problem being able to access those around the map. Alright, so at this point we're simply going to drive back over to our greenhouse, to the appropriate spot. And this can be a little tricky, particularly the first time you do it. For whatever the reason, the game does not always trigger the first time you drive by the unload location. So we're going to give this a try and see if it does it. There we go. So the F key unloads all of the fertilizer out of the back of the trailer and into the greenhouse. And on the right hand side of the screen, let's see if we move this around a little bit. There we go. You can see a little bit better. We now have 90% fertilizer. Now, for those of you who are completionists, you might want to go ahead, go back, purchase more fertilizer, and get that up to 100%. But I can tell you that will be perfectly fine for what we need in order to take advantage of the greenhouse. Okay, now we're simply going to head back, and then it's time to add the water. So for our purposes, we're going to take a look at the equipment that we have on site that I've purchased. But again, you can always work with different equipment. Okay, let's go ahead and just park over to the side and take a quick look at the equipment we are using. You might recognize the red tractor. That is a basic medium tractor and is one that you start off the game with. If we come into our storefront, it is the basic tractor we see at the top, the HS80. Now obviously it is not very powerful with only 75 horsepower, so you might consider getting a larger model if you want to use the water tank more often, but for now it will suit our purposes. Then we need to look at a water trailer. Okay, so here you see the basic blue trailer, $5,200, that we were using a little bit earlier. But as we come down a little bit further, you're going to see the first of the water tanks. Now this water tank has a small capacity in comparison, but there you can see it is relatively inexpensive. And also keep in mind that these are the prices located within the tablet. So they would be even cheaper by 20% if we go directly to the storefront and purchase there. Okay, but here is what you're seeing in the game world right now, what we're going to be using in today's video. This is the 12,000 model, which has a capacity of 3,170 gallons and a purchase price of $12,000. So we're using that simply for efficiency purposes. I want to make sure that we have to make the fewest number of trips back and forth to the water tank in order to get what we need. So that's why we're going to be using this particular model. For those of you who may be wondering where the storefront is where you can get the cheaper price? Well, again, here is our starter location for our farm. If we scroll on the map, what we're looking for is the trade center. Okay, this is what you're looking for. If you go directly there, then you're going to get an even better price. You can always choose to teleport over to the location, so it's not that big a deal, and plus the cheaper price is always welcome. Okay, so now we need to provide the water, and as we looked at on the map just a little bit earlier, we have a water supply very close by. Now in this game, the water supply is free. You have no limits, nor do you have any cost involved in obtaining the water beyond the equipment needed to simply do so. All right, so we're going to bypass our greenhouse for now, which has no growth just yet because we haven't provided all of the necessary ingredients. Okay, so we're simply going to drive up to our nearest water station, and we are going to press R to begin filling. Okay, now that that's done, we are very close to our greenhouse, and you can see we're not going to get a whole lot of speed out of this particular tractor, and it takes it a minute to get up there. That's why I said that you might want to upgrade if you're going to be using this water tank for many activities. You might want to get a much more powerful tractor. All right, so now we're going to pull in proximity to our tank. Press the R button again, and you can see in the bottom right hand corner it is unloading the water. Okay, and as we drive around to get back within range, you can see that our fertilizer is still at 90%. Now our water level is at 100%. So had we chosen the smaller water tank, we would have had to go back and make another round to fill up water once again. So now we are in great shape. We will simply wait for our greenhouse to be ready. And so then the question becomes, well, how do we know when it's ready? You can come into, press the V button, come back into your handheld, and we're going to go to functionalities and notification. And it shows us that greenhouse number 1 is ready to go with tomatoes, and in 14 hours we're going to be ready for our first harvest. So in this case, we're going to cut the video here. We'll be back just in a moment with our first harvest. All right, we are back now, and the necessary time has passed, and actually I have fast forwarded it even beyond that just so we could get into the daylight and not have to deal with doing all this in the middle of the night. So behind me on the pallet, you can see all of the tomatoes ready to be loaded up. Now we could use the small blue trailer that we used earlier. That would be perfectly fine. However, it would mean that we were going to have to make several trips in order to get all of our produce either to market or to storage. So let's talk for just a moment about some of our options that we have. Now we have very nearby a vegetable and fruit storage where we could easily take and unload these for sale later on, whether you're waiting for a better time or maybe a better price in the market. Or if we're looking to sell right away, we could go under purchasing centers, and then we simply look for the icon that we need. Okay, and as we scroll down, there we go. We can see we've got a couple of food markets, we've got a couple of food exports, and then we've got a motel. So if we start clicking on these just to figure out which one is closest, then we'll see that food market number 1 is going to be the closest for us. So if we zoom back out, we can see that it is in pretty close proximity to our current location, which is right over here at greenhouse number 1. So I'm actually going to press E and put a marker there. Okay, the purpose of that is the marker shows up in the bottom left-hand corner on our mini map. So first things first, we need to hop back in our tractor, and hopefully we can get these things loaded. As we pull just a little bit closer, and maybe. All right, we'll back up, give it another try. This is the downside of not having, there we go. Press the F key and that starts to load. The downside of not having the icons at the bottom of the screen is that you never know exactly when you are within range. So now you can see the yellow arrow in the bottom left hand corner is telling us we need to head west on the map, so we'll do just that. Now we're headed in the right direction. I really wish that the mini-map did not rotate. That can be disorienting sometimes whenever the mini-map does that, but for our purposes, you can see in the bottom right-hand corner that we didn't even quite use half of the available capacity in this particular trailer. So the trailer we're looking at here, if we head into the vehicle store, is the second available trailer. And if we take a look at the maximum capacity, the little blue trailer is 2.3 tons, and now we move all the way up to 8 tons. So that is a huge jump in capacity. Again, not completely necessary. You could do just fine with the blue trailers, but you just have to make several more trips. Okay, and another good thing about greenhouses is that as we work our way down to sell these, we already know that our greenhouse is back underway growing the next batch that will be available. Okay, as long as we keep it stocked with fertilizer and water above 20% in each category, then the growth will continue. So we have some options at this particular point. We can go back and restock both of those items, the fertilizer and the water, or we can simply allow the greenhouse to continue on. All right, let's see if we get just as fortunate here. There we go, the H key, and we are able to sell this off. And here in just a moment, it'll tell us how much we made. $3,904. Now, I wouldn't pay particular attention to the exact amount because, as I mentioned, the prices can and will change day to day through the stock market, which we can always take a look at. If we come under the shop and then go to stock market, you can see the various prices for all of the items that are available within the game. So what we're looking at, tomatoes, you can see the current price there, and you can see that it's actually gone up a little bit. There's our price for cabbage, and so on. Okay, so perhaps you make a decision to keep everything in storage for a time when there's a better price. That is certainly a viable option. Or if you're early in game, then that is a very nice sum of money to get you started, and it's almost available twice a day. So again, 14 hours between harvests. So we have nearly 2 harvests per day in the basic greenhouses, and that is a nice sum of money to get you going. So anyway, again, you'll have anywhere from $3,800 to $3,900 per harvest in most cases. All right, so at this point, we are at roughly the same time of day as we were whenever we got started with our greenhouses. So let's come back over and see where we are toward our next crop. Okay, again, it's a short journey to and from the greenhouse, either to the storage, which is located just ahead of us on the screen now. You can see the yellow circle. All right, but now as we get back in range of this greenhouse, you can see that we are already at 49% growth, and we still have 50% fertilizer. Remember, we only started with 90%, not 100, and we're still at 40% water. So the growth will continue, and we will be able to get an entire second harvest out of our initial fertilizer investment. So not bad. For $400, you can fill up the fertilizer and get 2 complete growth cycles from that. And of course, the water is free, but you won't even have to refill the fertilizer or the water level before we get our second harvest. So that'll take care of the regular greenhouses. But what about the industrial greenhouses? We'll be back in just a moment to talk about those. All right, so here we are standing outside of one of the industrial greenhouses on the map. So let's quickly take a look at where you can find these. Okay, as we back out a little bit, there is industrial greenhouse number 1 located where we are currently on the map, and then the second is a little bit farther over, just past the rock divide for the map. So the industrial greenhouses work on the same basic principles as the normal greenhouses that we've been taking a look at. We still have, located over on the side, you still have the area for the fertilizer. And then in the back right-hand corner, you can see just faintly in the distance, you have the water tank. The difference is they require twice the resources, and you can harvest them twice per day. So instead of the 14-hour cycle that we were looking at with the other greenhouses, the industrial greenhouse has a 12-hour cycle. So all of that is great. I have not, however, found the harvest to be quite double what we were getting on the fully upgraded normal greenhouses. So what is the other big difference? Well, there's a couple of them. First and foremost, the price, $250,000. If you'll remember back to our other greenhouses, we paid $15,000 to purchase it, and then another $10,000 to reach our maximum upgrade. So if we come in now, you see capacity is 40 on the tomatoes. So again, not all that great value based on the amount of money that you're spending. So as we allow this thing to complete, you can see there's our sign for our tomatoes. Now you notice there is no option for upgrade. So you don't have to deal with upgrades with the industrial greenhouse. So I do not recommend at the current time, as of course updates can always change these statistics and numbers, but an industrial greenhouse works on the same principles. There is the pallet where our crops will show up in 12 hours once we have provided the necessary ingredients, of course. But it requires twice the fertilizer, twice the amount of water, and you don't quite get twice the yield from my experience. However, the biggest drawback is, of course, the price. $250,000 is a huge investment, and an investment that it will take you roughly 30 days to get back based on the yields that I've seen. So for that reason, I simply do not recommend going with the industrial greenhouses unless, however, money is simply not an object for you and you're simply looking to increase your daily income. This will definitely do that for you with its 12-hour cycles. That is not a question. You can get some very nice income each and every day off the industrial greenhouse, but because it requires $250,000 as an upfront investment, it's definitely not recommended for early game. So hopefully you've learned some things. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for joining me, and stay tuned for more Pure Farming 2018 content here at Knee Pit Gaming.